this video is going to be on how to determine if the heat source is a heat pump. There are three main methods in which you can use to determine a heat pump. Now you might want to ask, why do realtors need to know the difference between a heat pump and a central heat and air, or just central air? Whether you are a listing agent or a buyer's agent, getting it wrong in either case might actually cost you having to buy a heat pump. You represent the seller in the seller's best interest when you are a listing agent, and you represent the buyer in the buyer's best interest when you are a buyer's agent. And you're supposed to look out for their best interest and work in their behalf. So getting it wrong, you could be blamed if you close on that house and it doesn't have a heat pump. A heat pump is a form of central heat and air and a type of central air. And there are other forms of central heat and air besides a heat pump. There's an electric only heat pump, central heat and air. There's an electric only, which is not a heat pump. It has a red glowing element in the inside unit, and it's basically the same thing as the auxiliary part or the emergency heat of a heat pump. And if your unit has only that, it's very expensive. And then there is a natural gas burner that can also be in the inside unit. It's what I would call a central gas heat with central air. And then there's a propane unit, a propane burner, and it would be central propane heat with central air conditioning in that case. And there's probably others out there. I think I've seen a geothermal one and some oil burning units, but they're more rare than the natural gas and the propane and the electric heating element ones. So let's talk about these three methods that you can use to determine whether it's a heat pump or not. Heat pumps have a reversing valve. You need to determine if the unit has a reversing valve. Only heat pumps have reversing valves. And that's one method that I'm going to talk more about for sure. The second method is, and I really like the second method, is to take a picture of the label and text it to your favorite HVAC technician. They're the ones that are trained to tell whether it's a heat pump. They can tell by the model and serial number, and texting the label, just take a picture of it and text it to your HVAC technician. And the third one that I like it least of all is to, you can place the thermostat in the heat mode. You can raise the setting above room temperature and see if the outside unit is running. The last recommended method requires the owner's permission, that method that I'm just mentioning. I would think you would want to get the owner's permission before you start changing the settings on the thermostat. And still, that method, sometimes there are things, mechanisms inside of a heating system that won't allow the outside unit to come on until certain requirements are met, and it's a little more complicated. So, the first two are your best options. If you see a reversing valve in the unit, if it's easy to see, you're going to know it's a heat pump. And if you can't see the reversing valve, well, then your best option is number two, is to take a picture of the label and text it to your favorite HVAC technician. The difference, let me go to the next slide here. The difference between a heat pump and another form of central heating air is like the difference between a horse and a unicorn. They look the same unless you can see the horn. Well, so do central air units that are only central air units and the central electric ones. They all look the same. They're in the same type of cabinets. They all look the same. So unless you know where to look for the unicorn's horn, you might mistake it for a horse. Um, and the reversing valve is what I am calling the unicorn's horn. It is very distinctive, as you can see in this slide. A heat pump always has one. It almost looks like it's some sort of a mechanical heart. It has, uh, you know, it's a junction where four copper pipes come together, and then it has this big long um, tube right here, which is where the slide is, and then it has this magnetic coil on top. And sometimes looking down in the heat pump, you can actually see this thing. Here's a typical outside unit part of a heat pump, and you can see that it has a screen mesh, wire mesh on top, and a lot of times you can look straight down in there and see the reversing valve. Sometimes you can't. In this outside unit, you'll notice that it has a cabinet in this area right here, and sometimes the reversing valve's over in there and you can't always see it. And this might be one of those times when you should call, or you should text the HVAC technician of your choice uh, the label off of the heat pump so he can, or the unit, so he can determine if it is a heat pump. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Here, looking down in the top of the unit, um, you can see the reversing valve. It's got the drawn ring around it. There's the long tube thing, um, and the other pipes go into it. Now here is one I'm looking down through actually my unit at my house, trying to see the reversing valve, and it's kind of dark down in there, but you can see it. Here's that magnetic coil. Here's that long tube thing, and here are the other pipes going into it. And in the next slide, you'll be able to see that better. I actually found a better place and actually shine some light down in there so you can see it better. And this is what a reversing valve looks like installed in the heat pump. Okay, now here is a label that I took a picture of, and that's just to give you an example of what you could text to an HVAC technician. It just so happens that this unit looks just like a heat pump, but it is a central air unit only, and it is not a heat pump. So I actually put that label in there so they don't really say central air unit a lot of times to let you know. And I have seen heat pumps say AC unit on them, and I have seen uh, them actually be heat pumps. Um, so this label right here is very important, or the discovery of a reversing valve is pretty important. This is just the inside unit of a split system heat pump. You'll be seeing a lot of these in houses, and up in here is where the fan is, and down in here is where the coil is, and sometimes that electric heating element will be up in here. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. This is your typical A coil that really it exists up in this part of actually in this part of the unit right here, and that's where the heat, when it's in the heat mode, it actually brings in heat from the outside and releases it through this coil, and then in the air conditioning mode, it pulls heat from the inside of the house, and a fan blows across this. Now this is the electric heating element. If you make a mistake and claim that it's a heat pump, um, it will only have this in an electric central air unit as your heat source. And anyone that knows when they run their heat pump off of emergency heat that their power bills are going to be outrageous. And that's exactly what happens when it's not a heat pump and you only have this heating element in here to heat the system. This is a red glowing heat element, and it really sucks electricity. Sometimes it will have one element, sometimes two or more elements in there, and usually I think they're about 5,000 watts each that they pull. Now here is two gas units. I just wanted to, these are the ones that have the propane burner or the natural gas burner in them. Notice that the, the difference when you look at the inside unit when you're trying to identify these is that they have the gas line. A heat pump will not have this gas line to the inside unit. This is like an exhaust, I believe, or it could be the intake for this unit for the gas burner. And the same thing for these two PVC pipes. This PVC pipe is probably the air intake, and then you see the air exhaust going out. And there's a red glowing burner in there, a gas burner, either propane or natural gas. And this little line here, all these even heat pumps have this. This is for the condensate. When it sweats in there and it gets um, water dripping on that A coil that's in there, it can drain out and go to the outside. And this one has one too. This is just a look inside at the natural gas or propane burner. It is a warm filling heat. To me, it's much more warm filling than a heat pump is. And here's another picture. Once you take the cover off of the inside unit of the gas burner, and again, these are not heat pumps. However, I must make an exception. There is a thing called a dual system that will actually have a heat pump and a burner in the same thing. It's very rare, and it's much more expensive, and you don't typically see those. Heat pumps perform really well above 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's where most of our temperatures in the winter are in Tennessee. Below 32 degrees, something like this burner would be more efficient. But again, usually it's one or the other, and the gas heat feels so much warmer. If you walk by a register, it may be blowing out 100+ degree air on you, whereas a heat pump may only be blowing 85 degree air, and your skin temperature may be warmer than 85, and it may still feel cool. Here is an outside unit that you see, and alongside of an inside unit. And sometimes you don't have both an outside unit and an inside unit. The outside unit and the inside unit are called a split system, and this system right here is called a package system or a package unit. Both the inside and the outside system are in one unit, and it's usually it's put on the outside of the property, and then ductwork is run into the house. And sometimes it's better, you don't have as much room on the inside, so you have to put everything on the outside. Text this label to your favorite HVAC technician, or determine if it has a reversing valve.